Special coverage this morning on the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, the first American Pope. And he is a graduate in math from Villanova University in Pennsylvania. The bells were ringing and students have been reacting.
Definitely a blessing to have a Pope not only from America, but from Villanova, especially the school I go to.
I think I've always been proud to be a Villanovan, but now even more so. It's so exciting, and I think you can just feel the energy on campus.
I was actually in St. Rita's when it happened. The mission ministry was live streaming it, so I headed over there after my exam, and everyone just went crazy.
So that is some of the student reaction. Villanova is the only Augustinian Catholic university in the United States. We'll talk about that Augustinian component in just a second, because I'd like to introduce you to a friend of the Pope's from Chicago, also a Villanova alum, and right now serving on staff, the Senior Associate Dean of Students for Student Support at Villanova. It is Father Bernie Scianna, but he tells me I can call him, as everyone does, Father Bernie. So I will for the purposes of our conversation. Welcome to our program, Father Bernie.
Thanks. Happy to be with you today.
Have the bells at Villanova stopped ringing, or are they still celebrating there?
I think so. I was actually leaving campus right after to go to Chicago for an event for Villanova, and the bells were ringing as I left. They were singing, tolling the alma mater, and just joyful pealing of the bells. It was an amazing moment.
Well, how did you experience that moment as you were watching the balcony and suddenly saw your friend arrive?
I was in my office, in Dean of Students' office, with several of our staff members around it, and as they said his first and middle name, Robert Francis, I said, "It's Bob. It's Bob." And that's how I know him for the last 35 or so years since I was a student at Villanova. And he's 10 years ahead of me in our formation and ordination.
I've talked to a number of people today who say it's going to be hard to address him as anything other than Bob when you have further communication. Have you had any communication since the announcement yesterday?
No, I did communicate with him on the death of Pope Francis, because I know he was close to him, and I have a wonderful picture with Pope Francis and then Father Bob Prevost. And when in 2013, I did say my condolences, and then the night before the conclave, I said, "I'm not sure if you're offline yet, but wanted to let you know how proud we are of you, that you're part of this, and that we're praying for you and all the cardinal electors." And he wrote back almost instantly, about midnight Rome time, and said, "Keep praying." So I did send a note via email, but I don't know if popes check their own emails, so that I'm still waiting for a response.
That's interesting. That makes me think of Pope Francis, who always encourage people to pray for him. So keep praying. Were you praying that your friend would become Pope, or was that something that you couldn't even contemplate? Or
yeah, I actually was. Many people kept saying, it wouldn't be an American, it couldn't be Bob, it couldn't be any of the American cardinals. And I kept telling people, he's got a shot. He's not going in as one of the top front runners. And the Italian saying is, those who go in Pope come out a cardinal. And I said, Bob could be a middle of the road, which I believe he is, centrist, and he could be the compromise, if you will, in a positive sense, bringing people together, which is what the word pontiff means, being a bridge, So I was hopeful. A lot of people kept saying no, and I said, I think he's got a shot. So when they said Robert Francis, I just was overjoyed.
And so it is. And Pope Leo, we've talked about the significance of the name that he chose this morning. I would like to talk to you about the fact that he is Augustinian, the first Augustinian Pope. We talked a lot about Pope Francis being the first Jesuit and the influence there. But explain to us this ancient order of St. Augustine, to which you also belong. I mentioned Villanova, the only Augustinian Catholic university in the States. What are the values of an Augustinian Catholic that he will carry into his papacy and might well shape it?
Absolutely. Leo is Augustinian through and through. He became a priest. He was educated in Chicago and Villanova and then Rome for his doctorate in canon law. Villanova claims, as many of the Augustinian schools throughout the world do, the core values of veritas, unitas, and caritas, which is truth, unity, and love. And I think those gospel values, as seen through the lens of St. Augustine, his value of community and caring for one another, loving God and neighbor, but through the Augustinian perspective, Pope Leo will bring certainly that to his priesthood. Another religious order priest, right after a religious order priest with Francis as a Jesuit, is quite remarkable. But there were one quarter of the electors were religious order priests because Francis put a lot in, including Cardinal Prevost and now Pope Leo. So I think the value of a religious order brings that he already has a global sense. As prior general for 12 years, the head of the Augustinians throughout the world, he's traveled to over 50 countries where we are. He knows the world. He knows the people. He's always very humble and close to the people. And as a religious superior, I was provincial when he was general in Chicago province, and he installed me twice as provincial. He always brings that sense of humility that St. Augustine talks about, that sense of community that we need to live not only within our religious houses but within the church and the world.
So interesting. I really enjoyed that discussion. So we can understand this gentleman better. I'm going to bring out a number of pictures showing the two of you over the years in a number of different places in your relationship. But one of the things that you came to mention there specifically was this global perspective, global travel, worldview. And that, coupled with the fact that he is the first American Pope. Can you just talk about bridging that? Because there were certain people who expressed concerns about an American Pope, given what's happened with the division in American politics and how it's being exercised around the world right now. But others have thought that he might be someone who can be a counterbalance to that. So can you talk about him as American, but also global?
Absolutely. And one of the things I kept saying that Bob, now Leo, could be the Pope as an American is he's not your typical American, which probably the Canadians are happy to hear. And that Bob is born and raised here, but educated also in Rome, spent almost 20 years as a missionary priest and then bishop in Peru. And as I said, as prior general, traveled to all the 50 countries where our order is. And so he has a global view. He has a world view. And I think Pope Francis recognized that and knew him from South America as well as his time in Rome as prior general. And I think that perspective as an American, but also as the person who knows the world is different than any of the other Americans. So I think we're proud to have an American, certainly a Chicagoan. We share that. But I think Bob is more than just an American.
Interesting. So we're showing some pictures. I have two right now on the screen. And one is the one that you mentioned with the three of you, you and the now Pope and the predecessor Pope Francis. And as I look at that picture, one of the things I see is huge smiles and obviously enjoying each other. Speaks to, I don't know, a sense of humor. A lot of people have said he's quiet and reserved, but that's a big smile there. The three of you sharing that moment.
He is quiet and humble, but once he warms up, once he knows people, that moment with Pope Francis, Bob was finishing his term as prior general, had arranged for the superiors of the order who were there in Rome for a meeting to have a mass with him, so about 150 of us. And then we got to meet Pope Francis afterwards, one-on-one, and most of the pictures are very formal and very serious, but I was bringing a hat to him from my alma mater in St. Rita High School in Chicago to give to him with the hope that he might give me his white hat, as sometimes he's often do. But he told me that the St. Rita hat that I brought him was a ski cap, and it was too hot in September to wear that. So the second point that really got us laughing is Bob said to him, Father Bernie, meaning me, will now be my superior, because Bob's was a member of Chicago province. And after he finished being the head of the order in Rome, he then becomes under the jurisdiction of the provincial of Chicago, which was me at the time. And so I gave him his assignment to come back to Chicago to be in charge of the formation, the seminary. And so I gave the Pope, the now Pope, an assignment to work in our House of Formation, which lasted only about a year and a half because then Francis had the last word and made him a bishop, which then took him out of my jurisdiction.
But now he's your boss. Now he's the boss for sure.
He's the boss of all of us, and a good one.
Yes. And finally, this one picture, we looked at it briefly, but I have to linger because we've talked a little bit about, just in getting to know him, his love of baseball and apparently the Bulls, so basketball. And it can't be a Villanova grad without liking NCAA basketball, too, I'm sure. But there's a picture of you, and you're and I'm going to show it to everyone. You're in a Chicago hockey jersey. Is there a hockey connection, too?
Chicago Blackhawks. And Bob, that picture was when he was prior general. He happened to be in Chicago for my 50th birthday party with my classmate, Father Tom McCarthy, at St. Rita. And he showed up. Not too many people have the prior general at their 50th birthday party, but he was happy to be there with my family and friends and the rest of the Augustinians. It was a wonderful celebration, and it was the night that the Blackhawks were in the Stanley Cup, and so that was 10 years ago, and so I had my jersey on, and of course. Bob is a Chicago fan. He's a White Sox fan. Some have misrepresented him as a Cub fan, which I am, but we can get over that disagreement. And but he is certainly a Villanova fan, and he is a Blackhawks fan as well. And I hear a Bears fan too. So he likes sports. He likes a good laugh, as you can tell from that other picture. When he warms up, he's very reserved at first, and I think once he gets connected, he can be very funny and joyful, and a great sense of humor, and just enjoys being with people.
Well, he is a young pope, so we will have many years, we hope, with good health, that we will see that side of him as that papacy continues. But I really appreciate the conversation and such wonderful memories you've shared with us today. Thank you, Father Bernie, and all the best.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.